I mean, honestly, what keeps me going is that there's so much to do. I think there was a moment where I was like, oh my God, I was on stage with Oprah before I turned 18. Did I peak at 17? And that brought some real existential pressure. Like, oh my goodness, did I do all the things I was supposed to at a young age? And there's nothing that makes me more excited than the things I can't do, because I think it shows that there's still so much life left to live. I feel like I remember. I could be making this up, but what I remember is I was in my plaid knee-high skirt at Catholic school. I had my button-up shirt on. I was starting my sophomore year of school. And I remember, like, the one thing I have to say about the Blackish audition experience was it was one of the first auditions where I was like, I don't even care if I get it. I had so much fun in the audition. And I think typically the audition process is so daunting that, like, all you try and do is barrel through. But I think just the energy and playfulness was there from the jump. It was so much improv, and I mean, it was my first day out there. I was just meeting these folks, but I walk in and me and Anthony have the same Cole Haan Oxfords on. I was like, kismet. Look at this, look at this. But I remember getting the call that I had booked it and being really excited, but also not really necessarily knowing what the show was in its essence. Like, I'd gotten sides, but we'd yet to read a script. We had heard ideas of it. And so I think booking Blackish, I feel like the surprise was continuously unfolding to me, because there was one thing to be psyched to get this character, and then there was another thing to be like, oh, we're a part of this really cool show. And then I remember when the posters went up and people were like, what in the world is the name Blackish? Like, what is it referring to? I remember sitting next to people as a poster would go by, because the promo was so everywhere, and them going, just shaking their head, not knowing that, like, I was one of the people on the poster. Wow. So then it was really cool once the show finally came out, and to say, oh, it resonates as deeply with this audience as it resonates with us.
Poor old Dad. You're never gonna see me grow up.
What? He's not even gonna make it through his birthday party next week.
I think you look good for your age, Dad.
Thank you, son. 40's not bad, right?
And I remember by episode 3, we thought they had recorders in our house, because some of the conversations were so in alignment with just the conversations we were having in our household that it was like, who was able to so accurately nail the specificity of these conversations of growing up as a young Black kid, and all of the hilarity that comes with that, all of the specific pressures that come with that, the family conversations that come with that.
All right, around here, we say grace first. Oh. All right, Zoe, lead.
I don't know if I feel comfortable leading grace when I'm not sure if I believe in God. Zoe started off as a representation of Kenya Barris's oldest daughter, who I actually went to school with. And so I've theoretically known this character in some iteration for like 10, 11 years. And even though Zoe and Kaylee Barris are now on very distinct, very cool separate paths, and I'm not doing a play-by-play of her life, it is pretty surreal to think that I've played a character for 9 years. That's flown by. I don't even know if he realizes how big of a deal it is that I'm 23 and I'm thriving in this white male-dominated industry, and that takes work. And I think in saying goodbye to Blackish, that was already a part of the kind of process of being like, okay, this show that I got to be a part of that's so special is coming to an end. But I still was filming Grownish, and so I think it's a whole other thing to be like, oh wow, now I'm truly saying goodbye to Zoe. But, you know, I think I sit in pride of being like, shows don't hit 100 episodes anymore. And so the fact that we get to go out with more than 100 episodes under our skirt and some great storylines and a wonderful cast is really exciting to me. And I think, you know, we're trying to take this opportunity to really say, okay, how do we wrap up this world in a way that really honors all the work that went into it? I think, in essence, the idea of having an acting world and then having an academic world really, one gave the other meaning, in that I think it took my academic world and the ability to study under professors that I loved and to be in community and to be discussing the things that have mattered to me at a young age, and, you know, to be able to go in and say I'm studying Black political thought under neocolonialism and embrace how specific that is, allowed me to then look at my work and continue to find new ways to find meaning in it, especially in an industry where, while Blackish has demonstrated the impact a show and media can have, it can feel extremely shallow. And I think we live in a time in which we operate in a world where we'll have these crazy red carpets, and I love it, but at the same time, there'll be these massive world events happening, and it's kind of hard to square the two together of saying, okay, here I am on this carpet with clothes that cost more than I do, and the world's kind of burning, and how do you make sense of it all? How do you make sense of the fact that it doesn't take, I mean, it really would have to take, I don't know what, for a show to take an insurance day and a day off. It didn't matter what was happening, you're going to set and you're filming. And so I say all that to say not to be a pessimist, but the fact that I really did need school to continue to excavate ways to find purpose in my work, to feel like my work was oriented towards some greater mission that was in alignment with what was happening in the world versus feeling like it was happening separately from the world at hand. And so school was that space where I got to do a lot of that experimenting. I got to lean into just the fact that I'm a person that loves to read, loves to discuss, loves to be in conversation, and to be in a place where all I had to do is read, discuss, and be in conversation was fun. I think I've always been really well protected. I think having two parents that are in this industry, having a mother who's also my business partner that, you know, understands my core values and helps me make those moves that are in alignment with that. And I say that because, you know, I always felt like my values and what I wanted and didn't want were reflected in my work because I had that protection and because I had people looking out for me every step of the way. I mean, I've had the same manager since I was 10 who's watched me grow up, same lawyer, and so even down to the way my contracts are formulated, he's helping me account for school and this big life I want to live outside of set. So I had a lot of people looking out for me, and I think the biggest transition was, you know, while my voice is there in my work, how do I look out for myself as well as the people around me look out for me was kind of the biggest challenge. I personally at times find it easier to advocate for things I consider quote unquote objective, like, oh, I can advocate for equity on set with ease, but when it comes to being like, hey, I think I'm tired, I think I'm done for the day, that is a hurdle I've been learning to jump. So it's come in phases. I think stepping into Grownish was a big leap just because I was valued as a producer on that set. And then I think in the past couple years, the two things that have been a big step is that like about a year ago, I had my big year of no, which was great. And that was just, you know, I think there's a lot of power in our yes. There was something really nice about being very specific about everything I said no to. Our team was already very discerning, but even with that, there's so many incredible opportunities that it was about taking another level of discernment and saying like, okay, well, what do I really, really want to do? And now this is my year of hard yes. So if it's not a hard yes, it's a no. And that has been funny. I mean, it's required me to check in with myself more than I ever have because I think there's so many opportunities. I'm grateful for the abundance and there's so many opportunities that come my way. And I think even just, you know, as a Black and brown person, it almost feels nonsensical. This space is so not a given for so many of us. It feels like our acceptance in these spaces is provisional, it's temporary. Somebody has the ability to take it away when they want to. That it sometimes goes beyond reason to say, why would I say no to something that looks good otherwise, something that helps me garner resources or relationships? And so it has required another level of checking in with myself and what I want just on my life journey to say, okay, this is obviously a yes, but is it a hard yes? My take on Tinkerbell, I think, nods towards the classic feistiness that we love about her from the cartoon, that kind of overly expressive nature, but I think what I love about this Tink is that she's really a partner to Peter Pan, and that was really fun to be a co-conspirator, and she knows a little bit more to the story and the backstory than everyone else does, and so it was fun to try and figure out the levels of somebody that has so much to say and is just trying to find the best way to say it. It was fun to work alongside David Lowery to come up with that because there were certain times where, you know, she's vocalizing and while the audience may not fully understand what she's saying, I'm saying real words and I literally went in between Spanish, Farsi, gibberish, and a ton of other things just because there is something to really still having intention behind those actions and moments, even if they're not translating to the audience at large. But it just took a lot of playing around to figure out what would be that nice balance of something that's fun to watch, a performance where we're still leaning into the fact that she's just a little fairy floating around in the world, but that you also see that she's struggling with, you know, all that she's carrying.
Gotcha! You were flying. A little bug did it.
I don't think that's a bug.
She is a fairy.
I'd have to say, as somebody that enjoys fairy tales and fantasy lands, it was a really fun challenge as an actor. One, just because it's such a lighthearted character, and so I think, you know, it didn't feel too challenging because it was so fun to bring her to life, but at the same time, it really was an exercise of imagination because I wasn't on the Neverland sets, I hadn't met my cast, I was literally listening to the audio, and I had eye lines for cast members, and I'd see the scenes before we'd film them, but otherwise, I was just on a set in Burbank, not looking at anything magical in particular, and so it was cool to exercise that part of my brain that really had to put me in a situation that was nothing like where I was, where I'm so used to being on a set, like whether it be the Grownish set, which actually has staircases and rooms and beds to sleep in, and it's very immersive. So to try and recreate that kind of immersive experience when the world around me wasn't reflective of that was more enjoyable than I thought. Like, it wasn't as much of an obstacle as it was like, okay, how do I literally fantasize what's around me?
I've always dreamed of flying.
I think what I love is that Tinkerbell as a character has just such a long lineage of really incredible actresses playing her, and so Julia Roberts, I think, is one of the first Tinkerbells that kind of strays from what we imagine as the animated version, and I love just the fact that it again goes to the idea of bringing so much more life to Tinkerbell and so much more thoughtfulness to Tinkerbell and what she's doing, and so it was fun to look back and watch, you know, the OG movie, to watch her performance, to watch other people's takes, to be like, okay, what's that middle ground that feels like I'm falling in line in this long lineage and I'm doing something a little different?
Hold the past in your heart, but where you go from here, it's up to you.
I think what really spoke to me was the fact that the entire Disney team, led by David Lowery, was committed to doing more than just swapping out the ethnicities, but telling a story that feels reflective of the times that we're in. And so I think every change was extremely intentional. It wasn't just this kind of surface level, like, what makes this more relatable? Let's quick throw some new people in there, but it was really a part of how do we create a new narrative where we get to return to the Neverland that we know and love, but we get to see a whole other configuration of Lost Boys that look like the kids that surround us. We get to see a version of the kids that grew up in London that are reflective of how diverse England and London is, and it was really fun, I think, even in seeing how he departs from the initial storylines to give Hook a backstory that, I mean, no spoilers, my eyes welled up a little bit.
Where is Peter Pan?
But I just loved how much depth every character was given, and that was, I think, what made it even more special because we're truly being integrated into the fabric of this new fairy tale. I think I'm just a little more comfortable with myself. I don't know if I've changed too much. I mean, I'm sure I've changed. I don't know if I've changed too much since I was 13, but I'd have to say I think I used to feel a deep discomfort with feeling different in any area of my life, not just as it pertained to being like, oh, I'm on this show, and how crazy is it? I'm a high schooler that's filming full-time and then going to winter formal. But I think just in all of the random, I mean, I was a quirky kid. I think I'm a quirky adult. But I think when I was younger, I felt a definitely more of a discomfort around being like, okay, why does it feel like I'm not fitting in perfectly? Why does it feel like I don't have this super large friend group? All those things I think used to weigh on me a lot more, and I spend a lot more time psychoanalyzing like why I operated a certain way compared to other people, what that said about me. And so I think at 23, although I'm not fully there, I'm a lot more comfortable with the fact that this is just how I landed on this earth. And so I kind of got to deal with it.